Hello everyone, my name's Lisa Mangle. I'm just going to hold for a few minutes just while everyone filters in. So we've had a record 450 people register. Obviously we don't expect all those people to log in on a busy evening, but the recording will be available afterwards. So 120 people in at the moment. When it steadies off, I'll get going. So welcome to our webinar this evening. This session is around ADHD and the workplace, and it's interesting because I've been working in ADHD for 20 years and I don't think I've ever been to a talk on ADHD in the workplace. Many around school, but not a lot about the workplace. So let's introduce the panel. Bev, do you want to introduce yourself? Bev Nolka.
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Bev Nolka, as Lisa just stated, and I am the ADHD life coach for ADHD 360. I also run a support group down on the Isle of Sheppey in Kent, been doing that for just over 10 years. So we do weekly support groups with parents and carers and young people, and conferences as well, which, you know, Phil from ADHD 360 has been one of our speakers. We actually finally got him down to the Isle of Sheppey and he was able to escape. So yeah, that's me.
And Kristen. Now, Kristen normally works behind the scenes. And for reasons that will become obvious later, we asked Kristen to join us. So Kristen, tell us a little bit about your role and what you do.
Hello everybody. Don't be fooled by the camera. My name isn't Phil, it's Kristen, definitely Kristen. I work with ADHD 360 on their marketing. That's me.
You do a great job with that. You're sort of underselling yourself there. I think you do a fantastic job at marketing, and take a look at our website and you can see a lot of the work that Kristen's responsible for. So my name's Lisa Mangle and I'm the clinical director at ADHD 360. So what does that mean? So basically I'm responsible for all the clinicians and myself who's responsible for patient-facing responsibilities. So I'm responsible for all the clinicians who do assessments, and we assess children from the age of 4 up to, I think my eldest patient was 76 when I assessed him. So I founded ADHD 360 along with Phil Anderton and Jen Lewis Neal, and we set up ADHD 360 3.5 years ago. Prior to that, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry, responsible for some of the medicines that we use for ADHD. And prior to that, I worked in the NHS. So I've worked in ADHD for 20 years. So this is really exciting, actually, getting that opportunity to talk to people, reaching out and just sharing our experience, really. So there's a poll up. I don't know, Kristen, do you want to explain the poll?
So we've got the poll up. Basically, wanted to kind of ask a bit of a controversial question because everyone's going to have different feelings about it, and we just kind of want to get a feel for it. Should you tell your employer about your ADHD diagnosis? So far, we've had 114 people answer, and I'm actually quite surprised. We've got 83% on a yes and 18% on no. What do you think about that?
Well, I get asked this question practically on a daily basis, and I guess my answer always is different depending on the person that's asking the question. And it's usually at the end of an assessment when I've diagnosed someone with ADHD and they just want as much advice and information as possible. And firstly, I usually ask about the the boss, what is your boss like? Are they understanding? Do they know that you've had an assessment for ADHD? Do you think it will make a difference if they knew that you'd got a diagnosis of ADHD? Is it going to be helpful? Are they going to make some allowances? That kind of thing. So I guess the advice that I would give would very much depend on what the answers to those questions are. Bev, what do you think? You might have a slightly different slant on that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a personal perspective, I've been quite lucky in the sense that I've worked with really forward-thinking employers. Even before working with ADHD 360, nothing to do with ADHD, I think having employers that actually took you for what you were able to do. They looked at your strengths and saw that rather than looking at the weaknesses. So, yeah, I mean, I did have someone ask me this the other day, what should they do? They were going for a job interview and they were really nervous about it. And I said, well, it's what you feel comfortable with at the end of the day. If you feel comfortable with telling them, then go for it. But if you don't, then, wait until you're maybe in the position a while, see if, that they're open to, putting accommodations in place. And I always think if you haven't got an employer if you've got someone that doesn't want to put accommodations in place, I wouldn't want to work there. I'd want to be with someone that can do that. But it's interesting looking at the chat, actually, because I've been looking at it and some people have said, no, I definitely wouldn't say anything about it. So
I was looking at the chat as well, because David's mentioned this being a timely talk because he's starting to go into an office environment for the first time. And I have to say, the office environment is probably one that I would think, oh my goodness, I'd have to have strategies in place for that kind of environment. But then I've just done an assessment today with someone who's been working from home, and it's been absolutely dreadful because although they didn't think the office environment was ideal, at least there were people there, there were people present, they could go and chat to someone, they could go and make a coffee for someone. So if you're a little bit hyperactive and you need to move, then you've got a reason to move. Whereas when you're at home, there's no one watching, no one telling you what to do, no one keeping an eye on how you're working or whether you're working well, or no one giving you praise. There's no one there to say you're doing a brilliant job. So there's no one to feed off. So, I've sort of changed my stance a little bit on whether an office is awful or whether an office is a great idea. But I think these strategies will come to, David, as we talk around things that you can do to help you in that office environment. So Kristen, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a really tough one because, especially if you've only recently been diagnosed, I think it's hard to if you're still going through the motions of the diagnosis, it's hard for you to talk about it yourself and with people close to you, let alone your boss who, not judges you, but is there to make sure you're doing a good job. It's a hard thing to say. I don't know. I think it really depends on your relationship with your work, I think. And it's definitely not an easy decision to make, for sure.
No. And so if someone was working, going back to David's question, if someone was working in an office environment, for example, what would you think would be the strategies that might be helpful in that environment, Bev?
Well, I think obviously everybody's individual, but I think one of the biggest pluses that I found is having something really simple like a standing desk. Just having a standing desk, having that ability to stand up, sit down, being able to move, it really helps with focus and attention. It does for me personally. And I think as well, if you are working from home, having that ability to just move about, because you, like you said, you haven't got the people that you can just go up to their desk and have a quick chat and a natter and, get that interaction going. Even if you are working from home, having a set up somewhere else in the house so you can actually move. And I think you mentioned that as well, didn't you, Lisa? Because that's
I mean, I've not got ADHD, but I think the same applies to many of us who are working from home, in that I've worked in this room now for over 2 years, and it's a very small box room with very plain walls, because I can't have anything too busy, otherwise people, when I'm doing the assessments, will be looking at my wall and not me. But I've had to move around the home, and I don't have a big home, but I've set up my desk sometimes in my bedroom, so I sort of turn away from my bed and I seat it there, and then sometimes I'm in my office and sometimes I'm in my living room. So I sort of switch it up a little bit, I suppose you could say, and it keeps me focused on a day that could be, 12, 13, 14 hours long. And I need to be focused. I need to be listening to people. So I need to make sure that my focus is tip top. I guess in an office environment, I think I probably would make it as structured as I possibly could, because I would struggle to work in an office. I know I would. When I go into our head office, I really struggle because there's a lot of people around, and I get distracted when someone asks me a question and I'm not going back to what I was doing before. So I think if I was in that office environment, I would really structure my day so that if I've got different roles and responsibilities, that I make sure that I'm grounding myself in what it is that I need to be doing. And I don't think I do. I have little post-its as well. And so it is, today I will focus on, and it's not going to be a huge long list. I might have a long list, but I will focus it with just 3 things that I need to do today. And the first one will always be the most important. My second one might be a cheaty one where it's going to be quick and easy. And then my third one might be a long-term project that I need to do a chunk of. And I'll have that stuck on my my screen. And I also would have a notice on the back of my chair telling people to shut up and leave me alone, so that I'm not distracted when anyone goes past, that I'm on it. And I would also have some ear defenders, so that I'm shutting out other people's noise as much as possible, or listen to some music.
You made a really good point about the distractions, because I think it's important that we schedule interruptions into, with ADHD, we are so easily distracted. Literally, if I'm sat here doing a Zoom meeting and I've got big windows over there, if I don't keep those blinds closed during a meeting, I'm literally like just looking out constantly. So I try and schedule interruptions. So like literally the last 10 minutes of an hour, that's when I will check on emails. I won't do them as they come in. I ignore them. I will check on them. And that 10 minutes is probably more productive from a responding to emails and messages than if I did it, every time they came in, stop, start, stop, start. So, try and scheduling those interruptions can really help, I think, with productivity.
I've just picked up on and someone's comment about the stigma of ADHD, and that's a really interesting point, because people come to see me for an assessment because they're struggling. No one ever thinks, I tell you what, I'll get a diagnosis of ADHD because my life's amazing. They come in because there's a struggle. Usually in adults, it's because there's a definite crisis moment. But I always see the brilliance of ADHD, the real positives of my patients. They're the things that I pick up on as I'm going through the assessment. And I think, so for someone to talk about the stigma of ADHD, I get that, because your employer's probably not had any training in ADHD whatsoever. But I guess that's your opportunity to teach them about the brilliance of ADHD. And as Bevan and Kristen and I were chatting earlier on today, I brought up a patient that I'd only seen this morning, who, in order to get the job done, he was doing double the hours each week than everyone else. Now, I'm not saying that's fantastic, but do you know what? You take the positives out of that he was passionate, he was creative, he was resilient, he was prepared to go not just the extra mile, but the extra 100 miles to get the job done. And he was doing just as well as everyone else, if not better. But he'd done everything he could in order to achieve that. And all those reasons were a lot of his ADHD features. And so I think if you do feel that there's a stigma with ADHD, just sit down and think about your ADHD and the positives, that it can bring to the table. And I don't know about Bev or Kristen, but I was just making some notes earlier, and for me, a lot of the positives around the ADHD is the ability to hyperfocus, the passion, the quick thinking, dynamic, out the box brain, the creativity, the real ideas, creative, visual person, and the like for change. They're not going to get upset if you change the job every 6 months. They're going to see that as a huge positive, where someone like me would be like, oh my gosh, I've just got used to this job, why are we changing? So, just really think about those positives to your ADHD and maybe open the conversation with those positives, not just presume that they're thinking that ADHD is about naughty boys when we all know that that's not the case. Kristen, have you got anything else you wanted to add to that?
Like coping in the office situation.
Yeah.
I think for me, the biggest thing I have to, as like crazy and full on as it sounds, I have to regiment my day. If I don't regiment my day, I end up with a list of about 100 things that I know full well I will never get done. So I have to have like blocks of tasks in my calendar. And then I'm kind of a bit like antisocial. I have my noise cancelling headphones in. White noise has been my vibe for the last couple of months. It really helps. The white noise really helps me focus, gets me in the zone.
So interestingly, there's a comment about someone who's working as a nurse, and this makes my heart sad that I'm not telling them unless they think it's because they might think it has an impact on the work, which I don't see why that would be the point. Richard, you've obviously got to where you are now, but I've got patients who are nurses, doctors, surgeons, lawyers, you name it. I've seen it, and I think if your nurse manager doesn't take things seriously and support you, then who would? So I hope they wouldn't use it against you, Richard. I think that would be really awful. So let's see any more comments. I'm looking. Someone else who actually works in the NHS and hugely supported in a role. So I guess everyone's in a different position.
I think a lot of it is down to awareness and understanding, and I think everybody's got a long way to go with learning and understanding more about neurodiversity, but it's sort of it's linked, but it's a bit sidetracked. But years ago, when I was teaching sign language, I went and did some deaf awareness training at a local council, and I was asked to go in. There's about 30 staff there, and we did this training, and it was a half-day training, and at the end of it, one of the members of staff there, she just put back her hair behind her ear, and she had an hearing aid, so she had this bobbed hair, and she said, I've worked here with all of you for 12 years and none of you knew that I was deaf, and you've all sat here and you've really taken on board this training, you've learned some signs, and she felt empowered enough to actually say, I'm deaf, I'm hard of hearing, I need to support. And I think it works in exactly the same way with any condition, but specifically ADHD, that if we do ADHD awareness training, we can go into organisations and do that and explain to the staff, this is what it is. It's nothing to be afraid of, because it's that stigma, isn't it? that, it's that naughty child, it's that, horrible syndrome. And actually the superpowers that come alongside it, if you've got someone working for you who's neurodiverse, you're lucky, because those are the people that will work longer hours. They will put 150% into everything that they do, because they're passionate.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that outside the box thinking is just key to lots of businesses. If you're in a meeting and you've got a problem to solve, you want that person who's going to come along with an idea that no one else is thinking about. You don't want the same ideas, do you? And I hear that all the time. Oh yeah, I always have the idea that no one else has thought about. And that is just invaluable in a business environment, isn't it? So how would you have that conversation then, in terms of being brave and speaking to your employer? How would you go about that conversation, Bev? Where would you start?
I would use awareness days as a start straight away, because if you've got Autism Awareness Week, we've got ADHD Awareness Month, and that's how I started. I started doing conferences during October, and then the organisation got involved. The whole organisation that I worked for all came on board. We all had the day off work. Everybody came to the conference, and they were so enthusiastic about it, because they were like, wow, we didn't know half of this, and then realised that actually it helps them in other aspects of their life. So I think awareness days are really good. Being an advocate, starting support groups, within the workplace, actually having, it doesn't just have to be ADHD, it can be neurodiversity, it can just be anything that sort of covers under that umbrella, and you'll get more people. Because I think once one person sort of pokes their head above the parapet, everybody else starts to do it, and you start to feel more, you're an inclusive organisation.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And Christine's also mentioned that she doesn't think that many people actually know what ADHD is.
Yeah.
And I think that's, even in the health service, GPs don't often know the finer details of ADHD. Teachers don't often know the finer details of ADHD. So you're absolutely right. And educating your employer is the way to go. One of my patients a couple of years ago he got a new job, and he works for the Department of Works and Pensions. And he agreed that they didn't really understand ADHD. So he set up his own support group, and it grew and it grew, and it just turned into something really fabulous. And he had regular monthly meetings with others with ADHD, and it was a real wealth of support. And that was led from people not really understanding what his ADHD was. He was a very inattentive ADHD, so it wasn't obvious to others, but there was still a struggle there. So he took it upon himself to set up a group, and he ended up leading it, and he never thought he could do something like that. So it was a real skill. I'm also reading here about the Pomodoro Technique. And so for those who don't know what that is, it's where you sort of set yourself, a time frame to work, 25 minutes to work with a 5-minute break. And then when you've done that 4 times, then give yourself a longer break. So that's something that you can set up. When I said you could have your day really structured, you can set those things in place so that you have got those regular breaks. Bev, is that something that you would include in your coaching and training sessions as well?
Definitely. So, I use the time timers. So the time timers are brilliant because they're visual. We can see that time's there. You can get the free app, download it on the phone. Tomato timer, you can download and have it on your computer. So there's no escape from time. But actually having that visual reminder, and I use it all the time for me, just sat here if I'm doing things, because it reminds me, number one, to have a drink, because my brain isn't going to function effectively when I'm working if I'm not drinking. And I'm not taking those breaks to walk away from what I'm doing, have a quick snack, go to the bathroom, come back. So, you know, we need that movement in our day, because otherwise that's not good for us physically and mentally. But yeah, Pomodoro Technique, spot on. I love it.
Yeah. So someone's also mentioned about, have we got any links or info to give to people who are a bit cynical of ADHD? So Phil, my business partner, who's probably listening, so if you're listening, Phil, you've got a job already. We decided that we needed a paper writing after today's session. So we're going to take some of the comments and discussion and turn it into a very short paper, you know, maybe 3-4 pages long, that will be on our website, that you can print off and actually take it to your employer. And that will just give them some data and some ideas and facts about what ADHD is and what it isn't. So that's one thing that you could do. There's lots of information on our website that you can download. I also recommend a website called Attitude, which is an American website, but it's actually pretty good. And so there's lots of information that you can download from there. So have a little look at that and give Phil a couple of weeks, and that paper will be available on our website for you to download. Bev also does sessions for corporate companies, if you're part of a corporate company, but there's also short, snappy sessions that Bev also does. Bev, I don't know whether you want to just talk about some of the things that you offer that might be relevant to someone who's in the workplace.
Yeah, definitely. So on a Monday evening, we have something called the Adult ADHD Power Hour. And they're topic based usually. So we might start off like, I think we've done rejection sensitive dysphoria, we've done organizational techniques, we've done all sorts of different ones. Anybody can join them. I think we'll send the links out, will we, Kristen, to people, or we can put it in the chat. I'll do that in a sec. It's great because we might sort of talk around that topic, but if that topic's exhausted, we can come up with other things, and people just come in and talk about things that help them in the workplace, in their general lives as well. So it's not just at work, you know, how they're coping with different aspects or challenges that seem to crop up. So it's been absolutely brilliant. And yeah, the workplace, doing the education training as well, going into the workplace, the professional training, helping managers understand about ADHD more, and their employees, and appreciating their strengths, because I really come from a strength-based perspective, because I think, everybody has strengths. And I think with ADHD, we tend to self-critique an awful lot. We do have that perfection paralysis. We might give 110% to something and still think it's not good enough, when actually it probably is more than enough. So yeah.
We've got quite a few people asking about medication. So a few of you guys are talking about being on medication, and is medication helpful for the workplace? So obviously my job is to diagnose, and if people want treatment, then treat their ADHD. So the NICE guidance recommend medicine as first line for adults with ADHD. And that is because they've tried all the strategies they possibly can off treatment and unmedicated, and there's a struggle. So if they're impaired with their ADHD, then medication is seen as first line. Now, the way I see treatment for adults is that we need to situationally optimise their treatment. So what do I mean by that? Well, your work day is probably very different to your non-work day. So what I do when I'm optimising someone's treatment is to get the medication right for the majority of the days. So I make sure that they're optimised for the majority of the days, but then I'll look at the differences between the days. So is there a difference between the workday and the weekend, for example. So do you want to have a bit of a lie-in, and you find that if you take your medicine a bit later, then you can't sleep that night? Or are you taking a medicine that lasts 8 to 10 hours, but actually at the weekend you only really need 4 or 5 hours covering? So what I would do is make sure that your working day was optimized and your non-working day was optimized. But then if your work day varies, then I'll vary your treatment. So I've got quite a few shift workers who might need, I don't know, a 12-hour product when they're in the midst of their shift pattern. But the first night shift, for example, they might need an immediate release in the morning and then a long acting that they take later that day. And then the night that they finish, they might not need anything because they're in bed, and then they might just need an immediate release until they get back on track. So it's about optimizing that medication for each individual and ensuring that the workday is optimal and the home life is also optimal. So I see medication as a really important part of you achieving your full potential in all situations of your life. So that's my thoughts on that. Bev, what do you think? And then I'm going to come to you, Kristen, with that question.
Definitely. I wished you'd been my titration nurse, to be honest with you, Lisa. I think it would have helped enormously when I was starting my journey with ADHD. But yeah, I think, everybody's different. We all manage our ADHD in different ways and need support on different levels. So, being able to do that, to actually optimize my medication to suit my day it would be amazing. It really would. Because I personally know that I am more productive first thing in the morning and last thing at night. Mm-hmm. There's that gap in the middle of the day that it's, I remember doing some training in Rotterdam years ago. And I think on the 4th level of the building, they all had beds and hammocks. Yeah, hammocks and bean bags, and they said anytime you want to go and sleep, you go and sleep. I'm like, wow, this is my kind of office, So yeah, being able to optimize would have just been absolute heaven. What about you, Kristen?
I'm quite lucky in that I had a very good clinician who helped me very much with my titration and finding what works for me. And exactly what you were saying there, Lisa, during the week, I am on my medication as normal, Monday to Friday. But come the weekend, if I've not got any extra work on, or if I know I'm not doing anything that requires hyper focus, I will just take a break for the weekend and just let myself have a weekend.
I think that's a good point, because quite a few people tell me that they can't chill when they're on the medicine for ADHD. So they can't just have a sofa day because they feel like they need to be on it. And I think that's a really good point. And I think people deserve to just be able to just chill and do nothing if that's what they want to do. So I often just recommend immediate release. So say something crops up later in the day and you think, oh, that'd have been really good if I could have focused a bit better. Then just having some immediate release that's working in 20 minutes and only lasts 3 or 4 hours is, you get the best out of it then. So yeah, I totally agree. So let's have a look at a few more questions. There's a lot of healthcare professionals on tonight, a lot of doctors and a lot of nurses, which is fabulous. So if you have a private diagnosis, any advice on having GPs recognise this for medication? Well, interestingly, we don't do anything different between our NHS patients and our private patients. So we have both. So we write to our GPs in the offset to say we've diagnosed ADHD. And that we're going to be coming for shared care when you're stable and optimised. And then when we think you are stable and optimised, we reassess you in terms of using rating scales and looking at goals and we ensure that when we write to your GP a second time, we compare how you were at baseline with how you are now in relation to your rating scale and your goals. So we give your GP all the evidence to say that this medication is making a significant difference. And if I'm honest, the GPs that don't do shared care, there's generally pockets of them. So it might be a certain area that don't do shared care for ADHD medication. But I would probably say 95% of our GPs do shared care. So we always ask, obviously, if they don't do shared care, then we can carry on prescribing. But we would rather get you shared care so that you can have your prescription on an NHS prescription.
Someone put a comment, Lisa, about the shame around medication. Because it feels like it's cheating. But my personal answer to that would be, well, if you wear glasses to help you see, you wouldn't stop wearing the glasses. That's not cheating, is it? I actually see taking medication as enhancing my abilities to do what I do.
I agree. And I think, so there's some research that was done a few years ago that looked at the quality of life of untreated diabetes versus other conditions, and untreated ADHD gave you as poor a quality of life as untreated diabetes. And I think in the workplace, your ADHD being treated optimally with medication will make you, a more successful employee. And so maybe look at it slightly differently. But if you got diabetes, if you were diagnosed with diabetes and you were given a treatment to make you better, improve your quality of life and your length of life, then you would take it. So why wouldn't you do that for ADHD? And also, having that treatment is a protective factor against other conditions that are going to impact you in the workplace, such as anxiety, low mood, self-harm, all those things that we know happen when we don't treat our ADHD properly. So I think it's important to think about treatment in a positive way, as well as we talk about our ADHD in positive ways as well. What does it do to enhance your life abilities and your work abilities and your relationship abilities, for example? Okay.
I'm wondering, the people that are watching this right now who've got ADHD, how many of them have actually had a confrontation at work? There's been some criticism, and it might be constructive criticism, but when you've got that, you've seen red, that instant, because I know sort of pre-diagnosis, I really struggled with criticism because I felt like it was so aimed at me and it wasn't constructive, when actually it probably was. But since then, and learning more about my ADHD and how to manage it, I always leave at least 24 hours before responding, even if it's by email or face-to-face or anything. I don't know if anybody else has got any strategies around.
Well, someone's just said learn to be quiet. I think
if only.
Yeah, it's the technique.
That's a hard one to learn, that, especially with ADHD.
I think actually taking that time before you respond, and I'm really, and obviously I've said already I don't have ADHD, but people who know me well, I often say, I'm going to give you this answer, but I'll come back to you tomorrow with a better one, because I just know that when I've had time to properly think it through, I might just give a very different answer. I don't really want people to be quiet. That isn't the answer, to not have a voice. But I think often people with ADHD have learned to be quiet because they've often said things in the heat of the moment that they may have regretted afterwards. Have you had any experiences with confrontation, Kristen, in the workplace, shall we say?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's very hard with ADHD. I don't know if anyone else can relate, but when you have your really excited ideas and someone just can't see your idea, it really upsets you. And I have had that a few times. I'm just like, but why can't you see it? Why?
Yeah. And someone else is talking about having brain freeze when in confrontation. And I think depending on whether your ADHD is treated or not, I always think about the ADHD brain as being a little bit like a laptop where you've got multiple tabs open, and you can just dip in and out of these tabs all the time, and there's no real process to it all. So I'm guessing that brain freeze is often, which tab do I go into? Do I go into this answer, or am I just going to dip into what I'm having for tea tomorrow, or what I did yesterday? So, I guess it depends on whether you're treated optimally or whether you're not. So some tips and tricks then in the workplace. Obviously, you guys have both got ADHD. What would you say in your workplace has been the best tips that has made the workplace environment more successful? Shall we start with you,
Ollie? There's so many. I have a standing desk, but I also have a wobble stool. So if I want to sit, I've got that wobble stool.
Tell me about a wobble stool.
Oh, I've got it here. Hold on, it's easier to show you, but it's got like this base, so it wobbles.
Oh,
yeah, it's amazing. It's absolutely brilliant. So I'm constant. I can have that movement, so I can burn that kinetic energy. Alexa, and now she's just got. She's my go-to. So if I work from home, but I have lots of online meetings, so I will always set that timer 10 minutes.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. I will always set that timer 10 minutes before, so I've got time to go to the bathroom, get a drink, and get comfy. I have lots of fiddles. I've been sitting here for the last 45 minutes with my fiddles, and my go-to is when I've got that slump in the afternoon, if I'm starting to feel a bit sleepy, it's my brain putty, but it's minty smelling, so it actually gets the senses going.
I like that.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really, really good. And also, I think, sorry, Kristen, this will be my last one. There's so many, but this is
I like it.
I always try and focus on the positive. So if I've had a good day, this is Bertrand, and he sits on my desk, and he's my little magic clicker. So I think I started this at the beginning of lockdown. He sits on my desk. I'm at 4,555. So when something really good happens, so if I've had a coaching call with someone and we've had a really good result, I give Bertrand, he's got an extra click and he shouldn't have had it, but I give him a little click. But I drew a little face on him, and just having that sat on my desk, I don't know, you need that, especially if you're working from home and you haven't got that contact with people. It's silly little things that can help.
Kristen, what about you?
For me, I would say, I suppose I'm quite lucky in that I've been able to kind of adapt my schedule to help when I'm most productive. I find it really, really hard to get out of bed in the morning, really, really hard. I also like to exercise in the morning. I just have a thing about I don't like to exercise in the evening. So we start our day at 10 o'clock in the morning rather than at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. And then we finish our day at 6 o'clock. So it just gives you a bit of time to not feel that fluster and rush in the morning. You get to wake up naturally. You get to go to the gym and have your little workout. And then you get to go to settle into work. You kind of have that time to really prepare yourself for that day of concentration and day of getting stuff done.
Yeah.
We have the sit-down stand-up desks as well, which are so helpful. I probably don't utilize that as much as I should, but they are handy, especially when you're getting that little bit restless. We have a breakout space, which has bean bags as well. The office dog is pretty handy to play with just when you need that minute of break time. That little rush of dopamine.
I think I think for me, obviously, I take a lot of ideas from my patients, and if they tell me something I've never heard before, it gets written down, and it's I use it for next time. So I think Kristen's, time to start work is a really, really important one. And I think in the pandemic, we've actually learned to work differently. And so you don't have to do most jobs 9 to 5. So why do we? So think about your better times. If you're on medication, what time does your medicine reach its optimal point? So maybe make that your starting time and work flexibly. Have very visual information so that the workplace is easier rather than harder. Reduce the distractions. Maybe don't have that desk next to the window or whatever it is that is your distraction. Those noise cancelling headphones are great, or maybe actually listening to music if that's your thing. Regular breaks that we've talked about already, and just that freedom to move. It's okay. Do what the kids do. Make an excuse to move. Go and make a drink. Go to the loo when you don't need the loo. Go and chat to someone instead of doing it via email. So use that ability to be hyperactive, but in a socially acceptable way. So those will make your workplace, especially in an office environment, a lot easier.
Have you caused a bit of excitement in the chat? Everyone wants to know where this mint putty is from. Everyone needs that link.
I did put the link in, but I did say it is cheaper on eBay. So if you buy, because I've bought some for I've got some students I'm coaching at the moment doing studying, so I bought them all a little tub of putty. But also, this is my other top tip, and I think someone did put it in there, are highlighters. But I use Bible highlighters, and the reason I use Bible highlighters is because they don't go through.
No.
It's that gel, and they all do different colours. So the putty and the tally are from Amazon, but check eBay. 150 flavours. If there's 150 flavours, I know they do. They do a few. They do a nice sparkly one. Blue tack is cheaper, but that mint. And also, the other thing is, if you get lots of interruptions, use a concentration crown. So, I've got a crown. I stick it on my head. I know I look utterly stupid, but if people come into the office, if I'm working, they know if that's on my head. Sorry, that was the timer from showing earlier. They know if that's on my head. Don't interrupt, Bev, because you'll lose a train of thought and it'll be completely gone. So concentration crowns are a must.
So as we wrap up, ladies, can we have 5 minutes to talk around coaching and the access to work that we chatted about earlier today?
Yeah, I think, Bev, there's been quite a lot of questions specifically about your coaching. Everyone wants to know what you actually offer in terms of coaching in general for adults, but also what you offer for workplaces.
Okay, fantastic. So what we do is we can do coaching, and we can do it for a whole hour. So we can do that coaching for an hour. Now, if you're interested in coaching, you can have a discovery call with me. So we have a discovery call, give you some ideas of what it's all about, how it works, find out a little bit more about you, and then we can book in for some coaching as well. Now, what some people do is do that full hour, and then we'll have another accountability call, maybe in 2 weeks, depending on your goals and what you're working towards. And then sometimes we might split that and have a half hour, in between. If it's a 2-week break, we'll have a little half hour check-in just to see how you're doing. But the coaching is brilliant. I had coaching when I found out that I had ADHD, and that's how I got into it, because I found it so beneficial to, me personally, but not just me. It helped my family, because if I'm managing me better, then I'm managing my house better. I'm managing my emotions so much better as well. I do a lot of psychoeducation training as well. So it's around helping you understand what ADHD is. I think that's one of the biggest things, isn't it? You get that diagnosis and it's like, okay, and there's so much to see online, but it's important that you need to do it for you. It needs to be tailored towards you rather than, because we're all different. So we do a lot of psychoeducation. The power hours work so well as well, because we all learn from each other, which is really exciting. I come away from them and I've learned things, and it's absolutely fantastic. So I'm learning from everybody else. And I think, Kristen, you've got some information on the access to work, haven't you, that we offer?
Yes, we've got so many questions about ways they can access coaching or anything else really for the workplace. And while the NHS doesn't currently offer anything to help with that, they do have a government-run program called Access to Work. We will be putting together a page on the website just with a bit of like a to-do list and how to do it. But essentially, it's funding to help you stay in work, get into work, or even for people who are self-employed currently or want to start their own business. It's to help people who either have a physical disability, mental health issue, or a normal disability. It's amazing. I think it's something that not many people know about, but you can get funding for your coaching, for things that you might need in the workplace. For example, your sit-down stand-up desks. You may be able to try and get that. I think travel was one of the things as well that you could get help with. It's just an array of things that will help you keep your job, get a job, or start your business, because you just have to be self-employed too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
And I think
we will be putting together a document for everybody on the website.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point actually about the being self-employed. So an awful lot of my patients are self-employed. So in fact, I've asked a guy today who I was assessing, are you employed or self-employed? He said, I've only been employed once, love. He said, I didn't last very long. He said, I have to be my own boss. So, take Kristen's advice. We are going to put a very ADHD friendly A4 sheet, bullet pointed, on how to do it, because we all know that these processes are very confusing and sometimes aimed at distracting people from applying. But we're going to put an A4 sheet together so that you can download it. It will then have exactly what you need to do and how you need to fill the forms in and what you can use it for. So that will be on our website in the next few days. Obviously, you can use that for a multiple of different support networks, coaching being one of them. So you can look at what Bev's got on offer, see what there is, and then apply for the funding and then get cracking. Because someone actually said earlier when we were talking about medication that it's not just about pills, it's about skills. And I totally advocate for that. Medicine is just a small part of supporting someone with ADHD, and actually teaching them about the skills and strategies is vitally important. Someone's not just going to pick up things that they've not learnt over the previous 30-40 years, however long you've been alive before you're diagnosed. And I used to say to teachers when children were diagnosed, go back, imagine they've not learned anything, and teach them everything that they've missed. They will quickly pick it up. And that is exactly the same with adults. You go back, you find out where the deficits are, and you upskill them and put them in contact with people who understand you and your ADHD and get it. So just to finish off then, if you'd got one piece of advice to give to the audience before we finish, what would that be?
Wow.
Just one.
No, you can't do that to me. I'm going to try and sneak in too. I'm going to distract Lisa. I think number one is acknowledge your strengths. You have got strengths, even if you don't feel it right now, even if you feel that ADHD is overwhelming you and it's taking over your life, you have got strengths. Everybody has them. And this is my little sneaky one, is surround yourself with positive motivators. Surround yourself with people that actually build you up and lift you and make you feel good. Try and avoid people that are just dragging you down and sucking the life force out of you. because you are, you know, people with ADHD, they're natural givers. They're the giving, loving, will do anything for anyone at the cost of their own sanity sometimes. So just protect yourself. That's the shortened version. Sorry, Lisa.
It's all right, let you off. Kristen.
I'd say my probably biggest takeaway on this one would be believe in yourself and be kind to yourself, because, you know, you're the person that's in your head all day, and being not nice to yourself doesn't help you. Be kind, believe in yourself. You know, yes, you might have a bad day where you're not keeping on track and you're not getting those things done, but tomorrow's another day and you will get there. Just keep at it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think mine would be focus on the positives of ADHD. It's easy for us to get bogged down on what we're struggling with, but flip those round. You know, I had someone getting really upset yesterday about the things they've not achieved. And I thought, hang on a minute, you got those GCSEs, you got those A levels, you went to university, you've got a job and a family and a house and a mortgage with untreated ADHD. That's amazing, you know. And I could see the light bulb going on that they'd never even thought about it before. So just look at all those positives of what you have achieved and be proud. And tell that boss about all those positives of your ADHD. So thanks for joining us. This has been recorded and it will be shared by the lovely Kristen. So thanks for joining us, everyone. It's been a really great hour, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good evening.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Bye.